We also have a new song maybe to debut today on the podcast. It was
stretching it, Mark. I don't know if that's a song, but it's something.
It's the new opener, and it's the musical stylings of Bird and myself. We hope you enjoy it. Welcome to another episode of Mark My Bird.
Tweet, 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 tweet.
Eagle!
So yeah, here we are, another episode of Mark My Bird. We have an exciting guest coming up today. I'm actually wicked fucking stoked for our guest. But first, we got to get to a little intro. And Mark, it is hands down the best time of the year to be a snowboarder, unless it's a POW day. It's fall video premiere season. Shit's been popping off.
Yeah, it's the best time to be a snowboarder if you're not posting all the videos online, because my week sucked.
I noticed.
I've seen 5 minutes of 60 different videos this week just to get them online.
So we got Search Party by Videograss. That premiere tour just kind of ended. I had the pleasure, the fine folks at Ride Snowboards had me come out for the Park City premiere at Skull Candy for Search Party, and they turned Reed Smith pro. And that really meant a lot to me because I probably shot more photos of Reed than maybe any snowboarder alive. I've been on a lot of trips with Reed. But the movie part of it, Search Party, is fucking dope. No spoilers. We're not going to give anything away, but I will say keynote parts that I remembered. Jed Anderson, Jill Perkins, Justin Phipps, Reed Smith, Danimals. Yeah, just all-star cast. And, you know, frankly, just as a snowboarder, having Videograss back in the mix, it's kind of what I grew up watching. I guess not grew up watching, but I watched a lot of VG stuff in my tenure in the snowboard industry, and I'm just fucking stoked to have them back.
Yeah, that'll be a nice one when it goes on YouTube if all their music clears, because I heard Jill Perkins is running the Billie Eilish song. Very, very sick. Can't wait to see that in full. Hopefully it can stay online for more than 24 hours when they upload it.
What else do we have? The Spirit video by the Dust Box. Dude, they did it again. The box just hits every single time.
Absolutely. Then Horsepower with Lolo and Henna.
Henna, yes.
Yeah, very cool video.
I got a link, strictly internal, for some natural selection stuff from Torstein Horgmo. I have seen Return by the Shredbots. And quite frankly, it's a fucking cinematic masterpiece. I mean, the riding is ridiculous, but the camera work...
They're doing a Euro tour right now with like Elena. Or no, that's a different one. But yeah, they're doing...
Every Island Has a Name by Arctic.
There's too many. How about Every Island Has a Name? They have a premiere in Harlem, I believe, at the Apollo Theater. To be Jared Elston,
pretty dope.
Get to just like go to these famous theaters and be like, cool, I'm in New York City and this is all for me. Arc'teryx's Red Rollout. That's pretty sweet.
For our listeners who are not watching the YouTube video, listening on Spotify, Mark is currently wearing a beautiful blue suit with a white Oxford button down and a gray tie. Explain the wardrobe choice today, Mark. Because when I FaceTimed you this morning, you were just in a robe.
Yeah, well, that's brand new. I have one suit. I've worn it to funerals, to weddings, to basically every important moment of my life. And today we're talking to a business owner, so I figured I had to kind of dress the part. For those that don't know, it's going to be Joe Sexton today. He started Public out of his garage, just like all the greats, the Bezos, the Gates, the Jobs, you know. So he's on his way, and I figured today's the day that I probably need to look official, since we're talking to somebody that knows about KPIs and return on investments and the other Google terms that I looked up when I wrote business in.
Yeah, Sexton is one of my favorite snowboarders of all time. He's one of the hardest working snowboarders that I've ever shot photos with, watched video parts of. He's world-class conversationalist, as I think our listeners will soon realize. The kid can talk. I think he's one of the best snowboarders to ever emerge from Minnesota. And in my personal opinion, I think he kind of helped kickstart that Minnesota scene, because he was one of the first street riders from the Minneapolis area that I was seeing in a lot of the larger videos, the Mac Dog, the People films, Videograss, the Stepchild movie, This Video Sucks. And I remember seeing this kid and I was like, who is Joe Sexton? I actually initially thought he was an East Coaster, because the first film I think I ever saw him in was an Adam Malinsky film. I want to say it was called It Ain't Easy. And so I was like, oh, is Joe from the East Coast? And then, of course, you come to find out he's from the land of 10,000 lakes. He famously had a bomb hole where Chris Grenier, their host, said he had a PhD in geobology, which I really think is true. I mean, Joe knows more about street snowboarding, how to make it work, how to hit the right spot, how to set yourself up for success than I think any rider alive currently. And I personally cannot wait to sit down with this gentleman. I think we're in for quite a fun conversation today. Ladies and gentlemen, let's bring him in. Joe Sexton. Hey, there he is.
How's it going? Welcome to the podcast.
You did wear a suit.
He did wear a suit.
You're a business owner, dude. We're here to talk. You know, we can start right off the bat. How's your KOIs and your ROIs and your equity, cash flow, margins? You got a good business plan for this season?
I need my suit on. We had our sales meeting yesterday, Zoom sales meeting. I wore a nice dress shirt for it. It was pretty dressed up for it.
If it makes you feel any better, I'm not wearing pants, so.
Yeah, that does. Well, that oddly doesn't make me feel better.
I'm going to go out on a limb and say that I don't think anybody on this podcast is wearing pants right now. So sales meeting, dude, how did it go?
It went good. I still oddly get like nervous to like present, and like it's like 7 or 8 reps and like, you know, like some key stuff like that. But you're just showing the whole line and you're hoping everyone's stoked and you're trying to get everyone excited about the season. I thought it went really well. Like I liked the energy from the reps, and there's a really positive feedback, and I'm happy with how the graphics are looking. So yeah, this time of year is kind of fun and interesting because it feels like so much. It's like you're selling in the current season, but now you're selling in the next year's season, and then you're trying to sell through your current season. So it's like everything at once, sort of.
Yeah. How many years is this for you running public?
Dude, this is year 9.
Damn. It's been 9 years. That's awesome.
Yeah, I think like the first handful, I still kind of barely count because, dude, it was like we were through Stepchild, and I wasn't as hands-on, you know? I think over the last, for sure, 3 to 4, I've been way more like, this is my thing. And in the beginning, I was kind of like rider and wanting to learn, but also like leaving it up to like kind of the guys that were like behind the scenes. So yeah, but the brand itself has been around since 2015.
Now that we're talking almost 10 years in business, what was the biggest learning experience in that? I don't even want to say the transition from pro to business owner, because you're still getting clips, you're still out doing the thing. But what was the biggest piece of learning that you took from going from a rider to running a snowboard company?
I think maybe a couple things, like from maybe like the running the business side, I feel like the lesson is like everything takes longer than you think it's going to take. And I just feel like I even dealt with that today with like a shipment that's delayed. And I've been doing this 9 years, and it happens every year. And I'm like, I can't believe this is happening, you know?
Yep.
So it's really getting comfortable with like trying to get comfortable with the things that are out of your control. Weather can play a role. Like you can do everything right and it can't snow, and that can really cause problems. One of the other interesting things is coming from a rider to then being a brand owner is like, oh, I see what it was like to deal with like shitty Joe at 22 years old, didn't want to put stickers on his board or didn't want to do that little thing. And now I'm like, okay, like it kind of is like a little bit of a take your own medicine, because I fully feel that now with like maybe a rider or something. And I'm like, man, why is it? And it's just like, I have to go back and be like, I was like that. I was totally that dude. So there's definitely a cool thing to kind of come full circle and go like, now I know what like Brian Cook was talking about, you know? And honestly, that's really like kind of a cool a cool thing because it's like, okay, like it makes me remember the times that I was like a rider and maybe have grace for my riders a little bit, but also kind of like, you know, more. And I even told Cook, I'm like, dude, I'm sorry. Like I see what you had to go through now. And we had a cool little like chat about it. But yeah, just seeing, because when you're a rider, you don't think about the things that the brand has to think about.
Right.
You know, and also when you're a brand, sometimes they can't really put themselves in the rider's shoes.
Yeah.
It all seems easier. Like, oh, just give me more money. It's like, we'll just do the thing. And so there's a lot of like people kind of miss each other with that. So I think with me being a rider previously and now a brand owner, I can kind of go like, look, I was in your shoes. Like, I know how this was and what this is, and let's work together to like make this work for both of us.
Aren't you pretty famous though for clips taking longer to get than what you thought they were anyway? So weren't you, I mean, you took 5 or 7 years to get that one rail. I mean, shouldn't you already know that things take a lot longer than most people think they should?
But that's the same thing, Mark. I'm like, I'm going to this spot, like this won't take long. And then it does. Like I've been filming tricks for 15 years and I still think it's going to be like within 10 tries and it takes 6 hours. So it's like something's not right in my brain, or I can convince myself this is going to be easy and it never is.
I mean, without that thought though, yeah, you know, that's probably the whole idea of starting a company is like, oh, this will be easier than you think. For those that don't know, why did you start Public? Kind of how did that come out of, you know, the Midwest?
Yeah, I mean, I rode for Stepchild for almost 10 years. Stepchild was an old, a really awesome snowboard brand, really core, like small snowboard brand. And I rode for Nitro for a long time before that and filmed in some of the Tech 9 videos. And then I kind of had this opportunity where I met Simone Chamberlain. It all happened because I met Simone at Camp of Champions in British Columbia, and I rode for Nomis. I had rode for Nomis forever, like even through the local rep. So I was kind of like building my way up through Nomis. They brought me out to the summer camp. I met Simone. And he was like, what do you think about riding for Stepchild? I was like, it's a really cool brand. I was riding for Nitro at the time. And I just didn't really know what that meant, but it was pretty cool to get asked by him to like ride for it. I remember we went over to Sean Johnson's house for dinner, and that was like the official, like, so do you want to do this? And I was like, I don't know. And I wanted to like think about it kind of, and I just didn't know. And then right at the same time, my really good friend Lance Hacker was the team manager for K2, and he hit me up, and I was like doing this like, oh gosh, you know, and long story short, I ended up riding, like K2 was going to offer me money. And I remember telling my dad, like, I'm not taking the money. I'm riding for this company for free. And he was like, you're such an idiot. Like, he was like, what do you mean? Like, what are you doing? And, you know, I think he now sees it, but I think at that time it's hard for someone to really like, when I was like, but they're making a movie and like, this is better for like I'm building something with them. And this is this new thing. I get to be a bigger part of this small company than a really small part of this big company. And, you know, I think down the road, he obviously was like, that was the right choice. And Lance ended up leaving, you know, a couple years later. Who knows what would have happened if I went that route? But I fully just followed my gut. And I was like, I love Simone. I love Sean. I just felt like they were going to give me that opportunity I wanted to film. And I remember K2 didn't really have a project, and Stepchild was making child support. And I was like, I just want to be a part of that. Like, that would be so cool. So did that. And then rode for Stepchild for 10 awesome years through Sean Johnson coming and going, JP Walker getting on, like going on trips with E-Man. Like, it was a really cool moment. And it was really cool to watch a brand like Stepchild kind of become like a pretty formidable player in snowboarding just based off their authenticity and their passion, man. Like, when JP got on, that was like incredible that the Don would ride for this. Where's he going to go? And everyone's like, I bet he's going Burt, and I bet he's going this. And he goes to Stepchild.
Yeah.
And it's like, now it's me, Simone, and JP. And not to mention, JP is the first guy watching a snowboard video when I'm 14 years old. I'm watching The Resistance, and now I'm on a drop-in ramp next to this guy. And it's like, if you would have told me that was ever going to happen, it was crazy. And then not only becoming like a friend, but like a mentor, and showing me the ropes on like how a trick is supposed to be done. How do you set up a spot? Like, so many things that like they grandfathered that stuff in. So I really credit like all that learning, so much like respect to like I feel so lucky I got to like be a part of that at that time. And then things kind of changed, you know, JP had moved on, and then Sean Johnson had left, and, you know, things just change sometimes. And I still have a really good relationship with Brad Richmond, but I kind of went to him and I was like, I feel like I'm kind of hit my ceiling here. Like I want to keep snowboarding. I think I was 26 or 27. And I was like, I'm not done filming. I just feel like I'm kind of at like a ceiling here. And it was a kind of a cool moment because he kind of felt it too. And he was like, well, what do you want to do? And, I had kind of opened myself up to other offers, and I did have some other offers that were like really interesting. And, but there was something like clawing at me, like nothing really got me as excited as like, and I was doing 1817 at the time. So I'd kind of like, for people that don't know, I had like an apparel brand called 1817. So I was kind of learning, man, I like this business stuff. I like kind of like doing seasons and lines and selling this stuff in and building like a brand almost was like what we were kind of starting to do with 1817. I was like, you know, and then it kind of became like, what if we just did boards, 1817 boards? And went to Brad and was like, what if we did that? And he was like, yeah, that would be cool. And we always had this plan of like, we'll just help you kind of get your, whatever you do off the ground. I talked to like Jake and I talked to people. It's like 1870 would be cool, but everybody has board sponsors. So all of a sudden now nobody who was on 1817 could ride the boards or could even wear the clothing anymore because now it's a board brand.
Right.
And so then I literally was just like, well, I'll just call it something else. And it's like almost through blind like dumbness that I was like, I guess I'm starting a whole fresh company, you know, like new name and new this. And then I talked to Brad. I was like, what if we just did a new name? He was like, you can do whatever you want. You just have 2 months until SIA. So you got to like come up with a name and graphics, and we got to like get these things out there if you wanted to come out this season. I was like, oh, okay, well, that's chill. And I literally just hit the ground running, hit up like a bunch of good friends who do art and kind of bandaged that first year together and was really stoked on the graphics. And then it was like at the trade show and this announcement, and all of a sudden, holy shit, like we're starting a company.
For those who have never tried to, like, for those who have never concepted something in their mind that's highly important to them and then tried to put a name on it, can you talk about how hard that process? It's almost like the idea is the easy part. The name is almost the hardest part.
Yeah, totally. And you have like an idea of like how the company wants to like feel or like this, like what you want it to feel like and look like, but the name needs to tie it all together. And that was kind of a cool, like, honestly, like lightning in a bottle moment where I have a list of like so many names, you know, and you're asking your friends, like, what do you think about this and this? And for the longest time, I really wanted to call it Private. I was going to call it Private. And I had all this cool, like, really like secretive, like, don't tell anybody there's this new board brand and like this kind of cool rollout of like how that would look in like ads or on Instagram. It'd be like this big secret kind of. And then I was like, yeah, but then when this thing comes out, it's not a secret anymore. And now I'm marketing this thing 4 years later about this like thing that's still, you know?
Right.
So I was like, and then it just clicked. I was like, what's the opposite of that? I was like, public. And then I thought about why I started it. And I wanted to start it because I wanted there to be a brand that is like, lets the community be involved. Like I always had this idea of like, I'm going to answer every Instagram. I'm going to answer every email. And I started that Tumblr page where I would just answer questions, and I was like public, like, and then I looked up the meaning of public means like the greater good and like all this cool stuff. And I was like, dude, that's the name.
Yeah.
And it's so like, it's so public domain that it's like, it's hard to even like, you know, it's a word you see everywhere too. So I was just like, dude, that's it. And I was really excited about that because it just clicked. And I was like, you know what, that totally makes sense of what I'm trying to do. Cause I want to include everyone. I want it to be for the general public. I wanted this board to be for the kid who mows lawns, who barely can afford it, but he's stoked and he buys it, you know, and I wanted it to be for that kid because that was me. And I was trying to create a brand that I would resonate with at that age, or that I felt like was kind of like, you know, how I felt as a kid growing up. If I saw a brand like that, would I think it's something I could connect to?
Is it hard for you to not make a board called the Public Intoxication?
It's hard to not make a board with like all those. And I get DMs all the time. Like, have you thought about public, you know, expo? And like, yeah. Like, but yeah, it's like, there's a bunch of those. Or like, I always just get people being like, you should do this. And it's like, now I'm trying to almost lean away from those words because they're too like punny almost, you know?
At what point as a business owner, when did it, just like when you're a rider, right? You're talking about standing next to JP Walker on a drop-in ramp after taking this risk of starting your own thing. and you're like, oh shit, I think I kind of made it as a snowboarder. What was that business experience like for you when you the light bulb went off and you're like, oh shit, this thing, it's working and it's going to work?
Man, honestly, I feel like we're not even there yet. I feel like your goalpost keeps changing so much, right? In the very beginning, I literally was like, if I can create boards with graphics that I'm stoked on, like I've done it, I've won, you know? And then now I'm like, well, what's our Q3 revenue goal? Or like, you know, like, so I kind of feel like that keeps changing. It does keep it kind of like exciting for me and it keeps it motivating for me. I would say maybe like okay, this is real, you know, start getting some international distributors. You start getting some reps that are connecting to your stuff. Maybe you get into like a couple big shops they don't bring anybody in, you know? I think opening stuff like that up and, you know, having a real season, delivering on time, it starts to be like, okay, this is like a real thing now. And that didn't happen for like a little bit, you know? And to be honest with you, like there was a lot of naivety with like, I thought I was going to start this company and just instantly they would just be all over the world and we'd be crushing it, you know? And I remember I got a real slice of humble pie when I called the first shop and I was like, I'm doing a board brand. How many do you want to order? And they were like, well, what's in them? And I was like, oh, I don't even know.
Carbon fiber.
Yeah. They're just, and I remember this pitch being like, it's just a snowboard, man. People overthink it. Like it's just a snowboard. And the guy being like, well, I'm not interested in just a snowboard. I need something that's going to like, why do people want to buy your board? And then I was like, okay, cool. Like definitely a punch in the mouth. And I was like, I went back and like wanted to learn about how they're made and what's in them and really what sets us apart. Because there's brand story and there's also tech story and things like that. So it was kind of like a learning thing of like, okay, just because I'm Joe and started this brand doesn't mean this thing is going to be sold at all. You know,
it's also it's a funny dichotomy in that, you know, as a pro snowboarder who got free snowboards for 15 years, you then have to shift your mentality of creating a product that people are going to spend quite a bit of money on, right?
Totally. And I think that changes too, you know, like you go from a pro and you just are like, you're just riding these boards and you're throwing them around and you know, you're doing all this stuff. And then now I'm like, oh, these things cost money. Like this all isn't so, you know, disposable. And so, yeah, totally. I think there was so much learning in that. And like I said, there was so much like kind of like an appreciation for what I had been given in the past. And yeah, just to like see it from that side was really cool. But that was huge for me to have that shop say that, because if they don't say that, then I just go and that's my spiel. And it's like, it's just not, I'm never going to learn. You know? So I really glad they said that.
Are you guys worldwide now? Are you shipping to every single continent?
Yeah, we are actually. Yeah. I think just about every single continent. Yeah. Which is really, really cool and refreshing and a bunch of cool, you know, Japan is like a big supporter of us, and it's just awesome to like see how they view the brand over there is always really cool, because each country has different cultures and different, you know, things. And it's really awesome to just see how they, you know, what their perception of public is and how they market it over there. So yeah, we have some really good partners. Yeah. And it's really crazy, Mark, to say that, yeah, we're a global snowboard brand. And with the artists we work with too, I'm like, how cool is that? Like, you know, this is stuff's all over the world now. Or like we did that board with Nick Dolan, who was like a friend of mine from back here. And it's like, he's like, dude, I'm getting pictures from people in Japan with this board. And I'm like, that's so cool. And that's truly what I like love about doing this brand. Like, I just love that and that connection to people. Now there's a kid who knows who Nick is, who might buy his art next time he puts out something. And I just think that is so cool to introduce people to that stuff, or that you kind of cross these like worlds with the way you can bring people in.
Yeah, we have 8 listeners. We have 8 listeners in Chile, so I know that feeling. Just wow, someone in Chile is listening to me now.
Yeah, you guys are a global podcast.
They're my favorite listeners. Shout out Chile, viva la Chile.
What was a bigger trip to you? What was a kind of a crazier feeling, seeing someone on the hill when, you know, riding your pro model when you had one, or seeing someone ride a board that is the company that you own?
I think equally, you know, I think when I was a kid, that was so specific. I had one board. So if a kid has that, it's like, whoa, it's just like my one board. And now when I see a public board, I still trip out. We have a lot of different boards where like the coolest thing is, I'll say, dude, is now if I see a kid and they don't know anything about like me or anything, but they bought a public board, I'm like, yes, like we've now like grown beyond like just the like the hype of like whatever it is. And that to me actually gets me so stoked. Like sometimes I'll be like, oh, like and they're just like, cool, like they don't care. And I'm like, that's super sick.
One of the crazy things about public is when a lot of board companies were kind of going away from that graphic in between the bindings, like you guys always made sure there's something super cool that like as a kid and even now, like it's one of my favorite graphics every year when you guys drop stuff, just like that kind of individual feeling piece of art in between.
Yeah.
Why did you guys stick with that when a lot of people were going blank or top sheets and all that?
I think you know what, we always like a testament to that was like, I mean, Josh was a big proponent in that and one of the cool things about working with Josh was he didn't come from snowboarding. So I think that was also a really conscious decision from me was like, I don't want the dude who's going to look at the new K2 boards and mimic it. I want the guy who's art and skate and fashion and whatever, and just let him come with what he wants. So when we got Josh to do artwork for so long, it was like, it really came from a really different place. And that's why it looks so fresh every year.
Oh yeah.
And Josh didn't even look at the boards that were out there and goes, oh, we better not do this. He would just come up with his stuff and it was always incredible. And then I think when people kind of maybe started to do that, we went just the other way. And now we're doing like, we've just always kind of been like just trying to do something different. And I think the biggest thing for us is never really doing something that's not inauthentic to us. Like I think every graphic we need to be like hyped on. Even now, it might be a really basic graphic, but that's what's like we're hyped on, you know, right now or something like that. So yeah, that graphic in the middle, that was Daryl, that was Josh, that was clean, that was Daryl's vibe. Like it was usually a photo of Daryl that he shot, you know, and I just think it made so much sense, you know.
You guys, the biggest compliment I can pay is you guys are a CCS brand where if I saw your boards lined up against hundreds in a you know, just a flip through catalog, I'd be like, oh yeah, that's the one I want. Like just
That's
based off graphics alone.
That's a great compliment, man. Yeah. And I think, and that comes from like, I've always loved graphics. I was a CCS kid, you know, circling the World Industries board. And I used to always go on the like, remember those like weird, like Switzerland, like they would show like the new graphics from the next year at the On Snow show. And it would be like all cryptic and you'd be like, no way, that's Nitro 16, 17. And like, you'd like click on it and you get a glimpse of a new graphic. Like I loved that stuff. And so I think that's where like my obsession with like new artwork and kind of keeping it like secret. And like, I love that so much.
Was the original logo like the guy that's behind you right now? If people can't see, it's like a guy kind of hugging with the angel and the devil. Was that any homage to Stepchild? Just kind of, it is like there's still a small child-ish thing in there with a circle and legs. I don't know.
Yeah, like again, like Josh came up with that. I think it comes from like just our twisted brains a little bit. Like he probably came up with that when it was like crunch time with graphics and he just felt like he's in a straitjacket of like deadlines and feeling crazy. So like he was really good about like putting his kind of emotions into like stuff, or like even a board that I had that said I need therapy on it with that guy. It's like he was probably like, dude, Joe's twisted. Like this is he needs this board, you know? And he's not wrong. So, but yeah, a lot of the times that was kind of cool too. And I actually have a cool story about that I need therapy board. Was I got a really cool message from a kid's dad who was really going through stuff and saw that board, and that spoke to him of like, it's okay to say you need therapy. It's okay to say you're not like okay. And that kid was actually going through a really hard time. And I guess that board, he like got it and put it on his wall as like a reminder that like, hey, we're going through this stuff too.
Damn.
And that really touched me. I was like, dude, that's really, really cool. And I do think we were kind of maybe a brand that was like trying to open that conversation up. You know, I think through the graphics and through some of like the subliminal stuff we've done, like, you know, we had a picture of like a skull that's like blowing up and it says like, I'm fine. It's like, you know, like just stuff that we've done that's kind of like, hey, maybe people are feeling that way too. And this is just a way to almost not make light of it, but take a little more of the power away from it, you know? And so I'll never forget that email I got from that guy, because it was just like the kid was going through such hard times and saw that, and it just helped him. And so that was really cool.
That's incredible.
Yeah.
I want to chat with you about, this is just an internal theory that I have, and maybe you can debunk it, but just as a kind of snowboard nerd and someone who's, been in the industry for a couple different generations, I remember when Deja Vu came out, it kind of clicked with me where I was like, whoa, this is like the first generation of Quebecois snowboarders that are realizing that they don't have to necessarily move to WIS to be a pro. Yeah. And they were kind of like, yo, we're talented enough to know that we can stay here and be pro snowboarders. Do you think that renaissance kind of rubbed off on the Minnesota scene? And the reason I ask is because after that, and again, maybe it's when you see your car the same color and other people driving it, you notice it all the time. You're like, oh shit, that's a great Tacoma. That's what I drive. Yeah. You start seeing it more. I just kind of started realizing that like, whoa, there is a huge influx of kids that are born and bred and staying in Minnesota that are highly successful professional snowboarders.
Yeah. I mean, I think that also was like Deja Vu. It was kind of like the way they marketed that whole thing too, right? Like with Lou being on Solomon, like not feeling the pressure to need to move anywhere. They were like, you're the best. You just stay where you're at and do what you do. And everyone kind of just came to them,
Yep.
So I would say it was a lot of like the brands, like there used to be like this feeling, like you said, like of everyone needing to move and like be where these things are. And I think they just had such a strong crew that it was like, nah, you guys come to us. Like, this is where it's at. And I think Minnesota, we're also kind of like Minnesota pride that we grew up here and we love it. Like, I think no one has really even talked about moving. Like no one, couple generations before, like, Colorado or something like that. But once we saw like, maybe like the Zach Marbin or someone who like had made it work by living here, it's like, well, I have no reason to move. And everyone loves rope toes and everyone just loves like our scene. So we're kind of like, it's kind of that same thing. Like, and then people started to like come here.
Yep.
So like, just stay where you're at if you like it. I think a lot of the people moving, it might've not worked out as well for them as opposed to staying,
Yep.
Like Danimals is such a Midwest Minnesota snowboarder. Like Danimals living in Colorado, like doesn't even make sense.
Yeah. 100%.
And for Deja Vu, like they made it undeniable. Like I'm like big on that lately. Like where it's like, they were so undeniably like good and professional at what they're doing that they were able to create this entire thing. And you had to it was just like every sponsor had to be into it. Cause it's like, and there was that rumor about like, we need to move or we don't get supported. And those guys were so good that they became like the benchmark. And now brands were like looking for a French Canadian as opposed to like trying to not have one on cause they're French Canadian. So I think they were just undeniable that it had to go that way. Like Lou is a once in a generation talent, and he truly is. And a lot of those guys in that video are once in a generation type snowboarders.
I want to take it back to the beginning. First turns on a snowboard. Where were they?
I was at Buck Hill.
Yes, I've been to Buck Hill.
Yeah, Buck Hill, and it was on rental stuff. I'm trying to think if that was the first day, but I had like a kid. It was like a friend of mine, but we were kind of like not super friends. I don't even remember the dude's name anymore. Must have been like elementary school or something. And it was like, I'm going to go snowboarding. And like, who knows why I was like, okay, it's just so weird how that stuff happens. But I'll never forget, I strapped in and like, I think I was like standing up right away or something. And I think on the first day, I went off like a jump like this big, like, and I thought I was like 20 feet in the air.
Oh yeah. Yeah.
Just never forget that feeling where I was like, whoa, I was probably actually this high off the ground, but I felt like I was like above the chairlift, and I think, I don't know if it was right then, but like, I definitely remember a moment where like things are just like clicked and I'm just like, I'm this now. Like this is like, because I was coming, that story about like my brother being a professional hockey player. I was trying to find who I was and my identity through that. And like, I was trying to play a lot of organized sports and my brother was better than me at every single one. And then when I found this thing that has like this counterculture and this thing that he's not even interested in, I was like, this is it. This is what I'm doing. And it was like, he couldn't even try to be better than me because if he got hurt snowboarding, he'd get in trouble with the hockey team. So instantly I was like, I have this thing now. And like, then it was like music and clothing and everything came with it. And I was just like, I'm all in. Like, this is sick.
That's incredible.
How did your dad react when you told him that you were going to sign for a company for no money? and your older brother was signing an NHL contract for probably a good amount of money.
That honestly all kind of happened around the same time. So he's probably like, or like he was on the track to doing it. Dude, I don't know. I mean, I think he was just like, hope you know what you're doing. You know, like I'm glad that he never forced me into doing anything, you know, and he always let me make the final decision, which I respect him for. But I'm sure as a dad, it's just like, what are you doing? Like, really? Like, you know, like you didn't go to college and now you have this opportunity to finally do something with this and you're going this way. So I could understand the confusion, but yeah, I mean, my brother was on the fast track to making a bunch of money and he ended up having a really awesome NHL career. And it was like, we were just on two different paths, you know?
But to be fair, now you're a club owner. So now you can actually rub that in your brother's face and be like, well, did you ever own an NHL team? Because I made it to the NHL of snowboarding and now I own my own team.
Yeah, I remember one time, it's so funny. He's so twisted with like money. He's like, he makes so much, you know, and he's like, what are these guys making? Like an AM's got to be making like 500, 600 grand a year. Like, I'm just like, yeah, Dan. Yep, they are. Like, just so funny. Like, just so delusional about the world.
That would be awesome.
Is he still playing pro hockey these days?
He retired last year. Okay. So he's done. He's out and he had a great career and he came out, you know, intact, and I'm super proud of him for that. That's like a 14 or something year career through the NHL, through the KHL. He was in the SHL. They won their Swedish championship league, which is arguably a really hard league to play in, and that his team won it. And then I think he was like, kind of done all I want to do, and I'm done.
Do you have any good stories of getting like family pass tickets, going to the stadium and like watching him play, getting all the good food underneath the club level seats and all that?
There was some of that, but the coolest thing was his first ever NHL game was against the Minnesota Wild in Minnesota.
Damn.
So it's literally like he found out like 2 days before Timo Solani breaks his hand. You know, he calls my dad. He's like, I'm playing in an NHL game and it's against the Minnesota Wild, like an away game in Minnesota. So like, and I was actually in California at the time, but I just like everyone's scrambling, trying to figure out like, how do we all go to this game and how many and all this stuff. And that was such a cool and insane moment, you know, for my mom and dad to see that in his first game ever, to be there. And then his next game is a home game back in Anaheim, and I'm in California. So I went and I actually took Pierre Minhondo, RIP, to that game. And it was such a cool moment because I think we were just there filming some stuff and it was like just me and him. And it was like, do you want to go to this game? And we sat in the players' wives section and I was just like, that's my brother. Like, it was such a cool moment. And then after that, getting to go to like just even a bar to watch the game, to see him and just being like, that's my fucking twin brother, like in an NHL game. Like, it never got old. And it was just so fun to watch. And like the funniest was watching him on TV with my dad, because it's like, as soon as he hit the ice, it's like, pass it to Dad. He's wide open. Pass it to like, it's like just always like you're watching one player and you're like so fixated on like, just get it. Oh, he's wide open though. They blew it on that one. Like, you know,
I mean, what a fucking incredible experience. I can't even imagine that as a parent, watching one of your kids play a professional sport, but then I'm sure they've gotten that same exact feeling where they watch one of your video parts and they're like, this is my kid just played an NHL game. My other kid has the ender in the biggest snowboard movie of the year. Like, that is so fucking cool.
Yeah, man. I mean, I think it's a testament to just how much they instilled like work ethic in us as well. You know, like I kind of took the teachings from my dad of like, you know, working hard. And when he always said, like, when you're good, you can tell people. When you're really good, they'll tell you. All these things that have kind of stuck with me of like relentless kind of work ethic. It's why I tried tricks forever and all this stuff. And then, yeah, I think he just wanted us to see that we were just putting our heart in something. And he could see that with me in snowboarding. He used to come to like Buck Hill, and from 9 a.m. till 9 p.m. I'd be snowboarding, and then he'd like flash his lights. And it's like, that was like so much time had gone by and I'm just out there snowboarding, you know.
Wait, and he's your twin brother? Sorry to cut you off.
My brother, yeah. Dan is my twin brother. Yep.
No way. So you guys never did like a Freaky Friday Parent Trap thing where you just jumped on the ice and just got like clobbered by these dudes? Or like, who do you think would end up worse off if he had to step into your shoes on a massive feature, or you had to go do one line shift in an NHL game?
That's a really good question.
Yeah, that is, Mark, that is question of the fucking year, by the way. That's incredible.
That really is. And I've never been asked that before. And I think, damn, I don't know, because each one could be kind of avoidable. Like I could maybe get by a couple guys and then my shift's up and I'm out.
Right.
But like you could kind of put one up sort of and just be okay. I honestly don't know, dude. That's a really good question.
Dude, that's pretty crazy. I mean, both of you guys excelled to the top tier level of like your respective sports. Yeah, I mean, big testament to your parents, but that's crazy.
Yeah, it's trippy when you think about it for sure, because it's just like we were twins, and then how weird is it that they're just so different, like they're polar opposite, like, you know, industry.
You're still both in cold areas and all that. So I mean, how different is it?
Well, I was gonna say now that your brother's retired, can he now dabble in winter sports? Does he ski? Does he snowboard? Does he do anything like in the winter time that's not hockey related?
He hasn't. No, like maybe I should take him out just to like give him a taste of like what it's like or something. Because I played hockey growing up. Right. You know, I played hockey growing up, so it would be kind of fun to take him out. I think he's just catching up on family life. I think he was so, you know, it's tough with traveling and being a professional hockey player and training, that I think he's excited to kind of take a breath and be with his kids and kind of catch up on that type of world and kind of start that new chapter is what it sounds like to me. But he's still like hyper competitive with golf and stuff like that. Like that's never going to leave him, you know, but I think it's got to be cool for him to just look back and like be like, wow, I kind of did it. I did the thing that like not a lot of people get to really do. And then retire at 37 is just like a pretty crazy feeling.
Yeah, that's unreal.
Wait, is he older or young? Who's the oldest twin?
I'm 8 minutes older.
Oh,
but it's never felt like that.
Yeah.
I felt like the little brother, like always.
Yeah. Here's one to put you on the spot. I've put my foot in my mouth many times when I claim a golden age of something. What would you claim the golden age of Highland is? Are we currently in it? Was it 5 years ago, 10 years ago?
I would say that golden age is probably like that Danimals Jonas generation, where it's like it was kind of pre-Instagram. We were doing like maybe like those 1817 movies kind of centered around Highland. We had this Haunted Highland movie that we made. I mean, anything kind of pre-Instagram kind of automatically like enters into that golden age just because it was so kind of special back then. I would say that Justin Fronius, Danimals, Jonas era of these guys that were like doing really incredible snowboarding, and then Riley filming it all. And, you know, you just had like the support of even Highland being like all on board. And it was just like a really cool thing. So I think that probably almost 10 years ago now, I'd say that's probably the golden
Do you have a top 5 that have ever touched the ropes there?
Ooh.
Yeah, maybe. I mean, I would say Danimals is in there. Jonas is definitely in there. Jake O.E. is in there. Zach Marbin, that's kind of who I grew up. Like, he was one of the first dudes, a Highland dude. And then like, yeah, Ricky Tucker, like I could keep going. I mean, there's dudes that I looked up to that were like the Highland kind of dudes. And then now even there's like the Billy Bottoms and these other next generation dudes that are killing it. You know, there's young kids there that are like ripping, you know, so it's cool to see it keep going. And I think Highland kind of has that lore of like, that's why I wanted to go to Highland. It was the place where all the good kids were. I drove farther to go to Highland because I wanted to be around Zach and Jonas. And it's like, they were so good. And I just wanted to be around them. And so that's why I went there. And I just kind of was like the little like dude out on the outskirts because they were so cool and found my way in kind of. But like, yeah. And then Jonas became a really good friend of mine. But before that, I just looked at them as like, these are like the guys, like I just got to be by them.
I almost look at it now. If you look at snowboarding like a season, right? Like the NBA or NFL, like Minnesota and the Highland laps almost becomes like a preseason. That's for the last like 4 or 5 years. And, you know, as Instagram becomes a bigger influence on our culture, as soon as you start seeing Highland clips, you're like, oh shit, here we go. Like it started.
Yeah. Troll for sure, because Troll opens a little bit before.
Yep.
Yeah, now you have people coming from Salt Lake, getting an Airbnb for 2 weeks, riding the rope toes. We had people from Japan coming here to ride early season. Like it's become this like pilgrimage thing, which is really, really cool. Like,
yeah, you have Olympic champions going. That like Zoe was so excited to get to go lap there. Like she was all stoked on it last season or 2 seasons ago, whenever it was.
Yeah, and that was awesome. And then you had Red Bull that got that house for everybody last year, and it's just like it was so cool, like that it has this thing. And then I think it gives, you know, Troll gets some love out of it, and people get to like all get together, and it's really cool. Like, and that's where I think, like you said, it's like now they're coming here, where we don't feel like we have to go there anymore. And yeah, so I love this time of year, and it's happening here hopefully in the next couple of weeks. And then, we'll start going with Tommy a bunch. Oh, I fucking left him out. Tommy Gesme, I would say, and Brady Lem, as for sure, are two other rope toe heavy hitters from Highlands.
There's more makes and bails per hour there than probably any resort in the world. The amount of talent and kids hitting rails there nonstop, like when we came through for DOS tables a couple years ago and stuff, like it is unbelievable. You're sweating just trying to keep up with everyone on the tow rope.
Yeah, and it's always like a 15-year-old kid who's like cutting you off to like do this crazy trick, and then like, yeah, I mean, it just becomes this like different type of snowboarding. But if you can hang, you kind of get good pretty fast because you get so many tries, you get so much, and you have to kind of be adaptable. Like there's ruts and there's this and then that, and so you kind of start to like learn how to be a little more like dynamic on your board rather than just like perfect setup, perfect rail, like, because that's not how it is in the street or really anywhere else.
You also, if you're doing it correctly, I learned when I first went to a rope tow, because I grew up riding at a really small resort in Manchester, New Hampshire, but it had a chairlift. It was like 200 vertical feet, and it was like a minute and a half long ride. I kind of always assumed you approach 1 foot strapped in, when in fact, if you're doing it right, you're never unstrapping. You are just constantly lapping, and it's either a toe or heel edge, hard turn right into the rope, and you're back up.
Yeah, and the idea is the rope's going so fast that like you hit the berm, and if you go fast enough to like catch it at the same speed, then you just like grab, and it's like there's no friction. It's like you're going so fast that you can just like
you can save your gloves for like more than maybe just a week and a half.
Joe, I know you're gonna hate this question, but I gotta ask it. You filmed, how many video parts did you film? Are you at 15? Give or take?
I think I gotta check. I think 14, maybe. Yeah.
If you randomly ran into someone and they were like, oh, tell me what your career was like. Like, well, what's the highlight of your career? Can you pinpoint one video part that you would want to show them to be like, I know you're the type where you probably, like me, don't think anything's ever perfect, right? Like I'm my own biggest critic. But if you could hand them an iPad to watch your one part, what do you think that would be?
I think Cheers probably. I think that maybe was like a wrap up of like where I was at. I was going to say like Child Sport, but that was a really early on video part. I don't think it was as like maybe polished or like as, but I had jump clips in there. So that's why I was thinking maybe Child Support, because I thought the jump clips in there were actually like hard for me at the time, or like it was like hard. It was cool to have jump clips back then. But maybe Cheers. It was just like my first year with a pro board, first year on like on that crew with people with Jeremy Jones and JP and Simone and Seth. Like that was my crew. Like that's insane when you think about it. And just maybe how hard I worked that year. And I really I was trying to do a bunch of kink rails, and I don't know. I just had more of a vision for that. I thought I had come into my own of how I wanted to look on a snowboard. Like I was wearing really like tight pants, but I had this like vision and feel of like really what I wanted to like look and come off as. Yep. So I would say that probably, to be honest. And then maybe as I get like later, it's like, the visitors part I'm pretty proud of that, just being a longer part. And anything I came back after that injury, like I was really proud of, because it was like the injury could have potentially ended my career, so there was a lot of stuff. Each one kind of is special in its own way. But I guess if I had to show somebody something, maybe Cheers. It was just long, and I thought it was a pretty dramatic song, and maybe that one had the most impact.
Speaking of videos, Clavin and I kind of filmed an intro before you hopped on about just how exciting this time of year is as the videos kind of start to leak out. Have you got eyes on anything, thoughts on anything?
Yeah, I was just at the Torment premiere and got to see like all like 4 of the new videos, and I thought it was really cool. I think snowboarding's in a really cool place right now, where I think there's a lot more than just tricks being highlighted. I think it's a lot about like spot selection and even the editor at this point. Like I was thinking when I watched Bryden's video, Dustbox, and the Solomon one, I'm like, he has such a recognizable like look and feel. Yeah. And that's cool that somebody can kind of like create that, because that used to not really be the case. We'd have a little bit of that, but a lot of times you could play a 3-minute thing and just be like, oh, that's Bryden, based on like the song and the way it's edited and stuff like that. And I think it's cool for for him to be able to like create that for himself, you know? And then also like, you know, we sponsored Cause's project that came out. So I got to see like all his new footage, and he went like crazy this year and is hitting really big spots and kind of snowboarding still like how he wants his snowboarding to look, which is like really tasteful stuff on big spots. It was cool to see Justin Phipps in the VG movie and the VG being back, and just seeing a kid who just looks so good on a snowboard, and like it kind of gives you like faith. You're like, okay, sick. Like so he like cares about what he looks like and does the right tricks, and it's just like I just love watching him snowboard. So you're just like, cool, this is his first kind of big part. You hope that there's many more.
Yeah, I was really, really blown away by Cooper in Dustbox 2. That kid is so fucking good.
He just continues to like raise the bar, and he puts so much like work into it too. Like he's on the road for like 40, 50 days in a row. And I just like that he's hitting like really big spots, scary spots. Like he looks really good doing it, tasteful tricks. And then again, the way it's edited, like that whole thing is just like a culmination of like, it just feels like Cooper, those video parts that he puts out, you know, and like beyond excited to see what he keeps doing. He's another one in a generation talent that you're just like, I can't wait to see what he does next. The kid can jump. He can do insane tricks, and he can also do big spots. Like he's someone who is like, I can't wait to see his footage every year.
And he just came out with a board too, like with a small time brand new company.
Yeah. So it's great. He turned pro for them, and they're doing like a board, you know, for him through that, which is great. And we were fortunate enough to have him ride for Public for a couple of years, and it was so fun working with him and you know, getting to be a small part of like his trajectory was great. And then he's moved on to other things, and wish him the absolute best, and really grateful for the time that he spent, you know, with us. But I'm excited to see where he goes with his whole career, because I think it's going to be pretty special.
You pretty stoked for what your riders got going on this year coming up and what you have going on?
Yeah, for sure. And like, even like shout out to Brett and Ryan in the Dustbox video. You know, we supported the Dustbox video, supported those guys, and they came through with awesome footage. And, you know, everyone kind of has their own style, and it's just so cool that we get to like support these guys and like let them kind of be who they want to be, you know, through the lens and the tricks that they want to do and stuff. And yeah, going into this year, like same thing. Like I even want to get out and film this year is like the plan. Like I think this last winter was the first time in, what we say, 14 or whatever, like even 20 years of not having like a clip or a part, which is like, it was kind of a sad thing. I was like, man, I usually have something that comes out, but I chose to focus on going to a lot of on snow demos and trade shows, and really trying to like get my foot in front like the other with the brand. And I really wanted to focus on that. So it was a conscious decision, but I still thought I was going to be able to go on a trip or something, and it just didn't line up. So this next year, or this upcoming year, I'm really hoping to get out there again.
How's the swing these days? How you hitting?
Swing's pretty good. Like definitely playing more and more golf these days, and skating's taking more of a back seat, which is sad, but like it's harder to roll your ankle on the golf course than skateboard it. So golf's been super fun, and like dad's a big golfer, so that's another way we can like spend time together. My brother's a big golfer, so play with those guys a bunch in the summer, and a bunch of my other buddies like Brady Lem's getting really into golf, Jake Oe, Jonas, like all those guys are really into golf now. So it's a cool way to stay in touch with like my buddies too.
Dude, and that's where all business business gets done. So, you know, your B2B conversations, B2Cs.
Yeah, it's better than the business call and put the phone right by the tee and then swing in.
There we go. Yeah, liabilities, cash flow, equity. Yeah.
Around for a second.
I was chatting with Rob Rothler, and he kind of brought something up where I was like, oh, what are the similarities between golf and snowboarding? Because you do have it, right? It's like muscle memory, repetition, a little bit of like competitive drive. But Rob told me something interesting. He's like, golf is almost more like skateboarding because it's like a feel sport, right? There's so many tiny little intricacies of like how the ball lies or what club to use or distance or wind that you have to factor in, that he's like, it's almost a little bit more like skateboarding. Like there's a little more touch and feel involved in golf. And I was kind of like, I never thought about that.
Yeah, I'd agree with that. And also like with skating or snowboarding, you like, oh, I didn't get that, I'll try it again. So like you hit a bad shot and you're like, no worries, I can hit this, I'll try this again. And then you could do that the whole round and then be like, well, no worries, I'm playing again Wednesday. Right. So like, you know, you have this kind of always like this, I can always do better. And with golf, it's a pretty crazy thing. You're never going to be like it'll never be perfect, you know? So it's like, it's just this thing that keeps you coming back.
What do you think about, like, you came up through video parts that whole age. Now, obviously, becoming a pro snowboarder, and you as a business owner, kind of, you have that other side of it as well. Like, kids coming up today, trying to get sponsored, trying to be pro, like, is it way harder, you think, than when you were doing it, or way easier, or what are the major differences?
I think it's easier to be seen because you have this platform that you can get this thing out to anybody, you know?
Yeah.
I think it was harder back in the day because you could be really good, but it would be just hard to be seen. You have to go to a contest and do really good, send your tape out and be really good. It was kind of interesting in that way. There was way less sponsored riders because it was just like, there wasn't this kind of like, you know, this rush to give everyone free product. It felt like it was really kind of like you had to meet the rep and kind of work your way up and do all that. But I think easier in the sense of if you put something out on Instagram that like blows minds, like you're probably going to get hit up by a brand and be like, yo, what are you doing for boards? You know, like it could be that quick to put out like 5 insane clips and people just being like, what's this kid's deal in Michigan? Like, what's he got going on? You know?
Yep.
So,
but then there's so much more talent out there. Yeah. Like, I mean, like, is it hard to kind of pick and choose who you kind of want to put on your team just because there is so much talent that you can see immediately all across the world?
Yeah, and I think it's harder to stand out once you kind of get that opportunity because it's sort of like anything else. Well, that kid was cool, but what's next week going to hold, and what's going to come out the week after that, and then you kind of lose sight of like, you know, what's special anymore because stuff just comes and goes so fast.
Yep.
So I think you can stand out certainly and get those opportunities, but I think it's also like, well, now you have 30 kids that are flow for you. And then how does that dude go to the next step of becoming like an AM rider or something, right? So what's going to set you apart that gets you to that next level and then that next level, you know? And a lot of times it's kind of the unspoken things, you know, like you have to have kind of like that it factor, you know, like you have to, it's just, some people just look amazing on a board and some people are really hard workers and some people are easy to work with. And some people can maybe bring other things to the brand. Maybe they do graphic design and they can actually help with that. And then it gets their foot in the door. You know, I think there's a big mix these days of kind of like, what value do you bring? And unfortunately, it's not the era of like, I'm just sick and I film video parts and that's all that's expected of me. I think now it's, like it or not, there's just a little bit more of like a game you got to kind of play.
Yep.
And, you know, there's still opportunities out there that people are getting. They're harder and harder to find. We're in a rougher economy time. There's not as much like money to go around. So you really got to like love it and love what you're doing I think if you love it and love what you're doing and you work hard and you rip, like it's going to work for you. It just will.
Yeah.
What about the idea that's kind of, I don't think any brands have acted on it in snowboarding, but there is like always the rumor of like, brands don't even need pro snowboarders anymore because like, what does a pro really bring to the table to sell boards? What's your thoughts on that?
Yeah, I don't agree with that. I just come from a different era. You know, for me, team was everything. I think you could, I mean, Ashbury was a great example. Their product in the beginning was pretty subpar. They had this incredible team. You had people just dying to get Ashbury stuff. I think if you can create that culture and that thing, that buzz, that's what's like, you can't copy that, you know? And so I think anybody can go out and build a product, but to put a team together and have this authentic thing, I mean, you see it with small brands all the time and you're just like, why am I just loving what they're doing? And why is that just so sick? You know, like Dustbox and these things, like, because it's authentic, because it's them. And I think the big brands say that because they can't do it. And I think they want to think that's true because they go, we don't need that and we can just do influencers. But you know, if you come up in the era that I did and that most of us did, like, you know, team's important and that's the soul. And it's kind of like, then why are you doing it?
Yeah. If you're not contributing to the core culture, there's no way that you can sustain.
My Ashbury hoodie was the worst hoodie I've ever owned, but I wore it all the time.
I mean, exactly. Like, look at that team and what they built and what that whole thing was in the blog and the whole, you just want to be a part of that. Yeah. And so I think it's harder with social media, but you see it in small cases where you're just like, you see people like latching on to these things because they're just real and authentic and, you know, the owner's there and whatever. And it may roll over and there's always kind of new stuff coming and going. But yeah, I think that people that are saying that are think it's not important because they don't care about it.
Yeah.
Do you get angry if a rider posts a clip where your board breaks in the clip?
I'm not a huge fan of that. No, I mean, I don't think I think they celebrated that a lot in those VG days, and it's like, I don't think you have to show.
Have you ever?
That sounds pretty corporate, Joe.
You ever snapped a board for in your video part? You ever just focused that thing after cracking it?
I never have. I would always I tried to go away. I remember one time I ran around the school to freak out and focus my board. I was notorious for beating the shit out of my boards, and it was already broken or something. But I remember Pierre was filming me, and I he was waiting for me to freak out, and I literally ran around the corner and then did everything and came back probably just full head down. That was embarrassing.
No. Joe, before we sign off, I just want you to know that it's a standing offer that if you ever need business financial advice or a personal injury attorney, you have Mark's number.
We actually have a meeting right after this.
Okay.
At noon. We're going to just talk about kind of what he can do for me. And yeah, I'm really excited.
I can stay on. I went to my future uncle-in-law asking financial advice, and he was like, "No, I'm not taking you on." I was like, "We're family." He's like, "No, your books are a mess."
Did you wear the suit?
I did not wear the suit. Maybe I also wasn't wearing pants, so maybe I should have. I should have gone full on for that one.
Yeah, it sounds like you just didn't come prepared, and you gotta dress for the job you want, not the job you have.
That's right. Fake it till you make it, Mark. We're gonna get you to where you need and want.
I want to be a congressman. Yeah.
Yeah. Sick.
Joe, thank you for your time, buddy. You are you're world class. You're a good human, right?
Hey, thank you guys. I've known you guys a long time, and I'm stoked you're doing this podcast, and I can't wait to see you guys next in person. And congrats on everything. And I loved T.Bird. We've been through some awesome times, and Mark as well. And it's it's cool that we're still doing this, it's funny to be on trips a long time ago, and now everything looks different, but it's still kind of the same. So
yeah, 100%.
On and inviting me on, and I hope you guys have a good day.
I have to say, from a kid from the Midwest, one of the highlights of my career was getting to give you your snowboarder cover at Bear, that bob shot. You were always one of my favorite snowboarders, and then just coming from that area and everything. I don't know if you consider Ohio the Midwest, because you guys are in the heart of the Midwest, but truthfully, one of my all-time favorites. That's what T.Bird normally says, but I reserve it for just a few guests that I wear suits on. Everyone else can feel bad about their episodes, but
awesome.
Thank you so much.
Yeah, that moment was incredible too, and I would say that was a highlight of my career, just with that rail and getting that cover and stuff like that. Those are the moments where you're just how is this real? This is so cool. So yeah, thank you guys for everything, and I appreciate you both, and hopefully see you soon.
Hell yeah, Joe. Sure. Thank you, buddy. Appreciate you.
Thank you.